which a lot of them do, no agents, then you need to honor that, right? Because they've said, I don't want to be contacted by an agent.
Yeah, so if we're an agent, they are for sale by owner, so you're thinking, oh, it's okay to call, but then they add the do not, and they're on the do not call, and you're an agent, and they say that you can't call, because then.
What about you? You go ahead and you buy investment property.
Well, if I called and said, hey, I'm interested in it for my own thing, they could still possibly say, hey, I'm on the do not call and you're an agent. They could possibly hold an account.
Is that true, even if you have a buyer?
Yeah, so it says no.
If it says no agents, yeah, you're supposed to honor it.
No agents, no call.
Okay.
Doesn't matter the situation.
I think you would be protected if you were looking to purchase it yourself.
I'm thinking I could probably be savvy enough to talk my way around it and have them not turn me in. However, I could still be held accountable.
So in the situation where like maybe your buyer, they drove by, they saw the sign, they send you the picture of the sign and they're like, oh, there's no agents. So obviously the buyer could call them.
Have the buyer call me,
And but then at that point, like,
then ask permission to have you call them.
okay, so just say.
Yeah, say, hey, I'm a buyer, I'm interested in your house, but I am working with an agent. I'm only gonna buy your house if I can use my agent. I'm paying for an agent. And so them giving them permission to have you call takes care of that.
But now you got to keep in mind that these people have to go and turn us in, right? So are they really that mad that agents are calling them and they put do not, they're on the do not call and they say no agents? All these agents who don't care are calling. You might be that one where they're just pissed off and said, okay, that's enough.
You might be the one that takes them over the edge.
Yeah.
You don't know. Don't want to be that one. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the next one.
I have one quick question. It said, you guys said that the do not call list, it drops off after 3 years, right? So just trying to see, I went ahead to register like a few phone numbers that I have. And one of them, it says, thank you for registering your phone number with the National Do Not Call Registry. You successfully registered your phone number ending in 2685 on April 30th, 2005. So does it really drop off after 3 years?
That's what I understand. Yeah, based on the literature.
Because I'm like going to register it and it says still registered from 2005. Which is 19 years.
Well, we'll check on that, but
I don't know.
yeah, there's an obligation to keep registering with the phone. Yeah,
I remember that being a big deal
yeah,
20 years ago.
yeah.
I wonder if they started saying originally they said you're forever, but now everyone seems like their cell numbers change hands.
And landlines are almost non-existent.
Yeah. I remember the last landline I had, I think, was in 2008, and it was not even a landline. It was only so it could call my alarm system, could call the cops or the fire department. It wasn't even really a landline. That was that long ago.
Or just connect, yeah.
Yeah. Crazy how technology's changed. So the maintain an internal do not call list. So this is for you and or your team. Now, the very first topic or the very first bullet point that Ken talked about was that we as a market center and we as a KW International, we don't keep do not call list. Do you guys understand and know why we do not?
Liability.
For liability, right? And now if the market center was to go on a calling spree, if you will, we would then create our own for that, right? But we don't want I'm going to say the responsibility to maintain them, because you can see where if we have 250 agents and we're all working remotely and keeping that updated regularly, it's huge. So we had one of our brokers that was saying, well, why don't we do one as a region? We're like, no. So all the brokers came together and says, no, it's an absolute nightmare. And I could see doing it internationally, or by, they would have a whole department in Austin just dedicated just for that. Because it would be like updating them by the minute. Yeah, they wouldn't be able to keep up with that. So that's why we ask you, we encourage we're telling you, right, this is being recorded, we're telling you that you need to keep your own internal one for you and your team. Now, let's say I'm going to use you as an example as Connection Homes. If you call and you add someone to your do not call, right, that's supposed to comply to everyone on your team around you, right? So if they call, someone says, hey, I'm on the do not call for whatever reason that didn't show up. So, okay, I'll add you to the list. And then the next person on your team calls, bam, that's where you're liable.
So the number now does not expire. So it did expire, now it does not. So once you put your information in the system, it never expires. So just check and make sure that your number's in there. And then once it's in there, it will never expire. The other thing is that you're not liable for making a call until after the person has been registered with the do not call list for 31 days. So that's another thing too. They give you 31 days in order for that number to populate all of the sites. So there's the other issue.
The next topic is the auto dialers. Now, in the state of Utah, they made robo dialing actually against the rules. However, this is not referring to just the robo dialers. This is referring to those ones that just automatically call. And a lot of them is when they add a number. So they're just calling sequential numbers, right? So my number is 801-540-3447. So an example what this would be is then it would call 3448, 3449, right? So you're not supposed to use a dialer. Now I know that there are teams. Do we have any teams here that use a dialer? I know a lot of the larger teams do use them. If your lists are scrubbed, this wouldn't, right?
Like if you got like through Bold, you get a list through Landvoice, you ran it through Mojo. It's fine.
You should be fine.
Yeah, Landvoice, RedX is another service that you can pay for numbers that have been scrubbed. You can ask for farm areas. You can tell RedX, hey, I want all of the numbers in this geographical area. They'll pull all those numbers. They'll tell you whether they're on the registry or not. They also provide for sale by owners and expireds. So if you have an interest in pursuing those kinds of sellers, RedX is a good source, or Landvoice to scrub those for you before you call.
The artificial voice, pre-recorded messages, ringless voicemails. So if you're just thinking, oh, I'm just going to leave a voicemail, or that still is a do not call. If they're on that list, doesn't matter if it's a voicemail, doesn't matter. I guess it doesn't matter. It's a fax too, right? So if they're on the list, if it's just a voicemail, there are slide dial is an example where I put in Rusty's number and it'll call Rusty and leave a voicemail and makes it sound like to her because it's my message that I left, but I tried to call her and I missed her call or she missed my call. And so I leave her the message. That still is if they're on the do not call, that's still you're not in compliance.
It doesn't show up in their phone call registry. It bypasses their phone and goes directly to their voicemail. So some agents or marketers feel like that's a way to circumvent. It's because they can't prove by showing their call registry.
It actually does show up as a missed call.
It does.
Yeah.
Does that?
Yeah.
It shows as a missed call, so it literally does like a half a ring, so it's a missed call, and then it leaves a slide dial, because we use slide dial, and I'll get messages back of like, I don't even know how I missed your call, it just popped up as a missed call. And so yeah, it definitely does, like it shows the number calls, but it doesn't even really ring. It's like before the ring, it like rings and hangs up and then leaves a message.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So it does show the
But
number.
now you can use
Something
that
up.
because it's a handy tool, right? Especially if you're in bold and you got to make all your phone calls. It's a handy tool to get people to call you back. However, those are people that you have a relationship with that you do have pre-authorized permission, right, in advance. So that's why I'm calling it pre-authorized in advance, right? Because they've already had a conversation with you. So
And would it be like, let's say, I mean, like I'm thinking like I'm going into my 7th year. And maybe a couple people, people that I met 7 years ago, maybe they're like, their situation's changed and I initially had permission, but maybe I haven't, for whatever reason, I'm just throwing
Kept
stuff
up with them.
with them. And then I do a mass slide dial to invite them to an event, and then I get a message like, take me off your list, like I don't want to be spammed anymore, whatever. Like, because I initially have permission, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But I need to take them off after that. And
Correct.
if I contact them after that is when I'm an issue.
Yes, that is the appropriate way to handle it.
Yeah, you have permission and then they're withdrawing their membership.
Yep. And you never know, like you could have a client that you sold a place to and during that duration of time that they were looking and buying, you talk to them every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, right? Then 10 years later, they got married to someone else and that person is now an agent, so they no longer want you to contact them. Right? So they could have been someone who you had a great relationship with at some point. And you don't want to sever it by being a nuisance.
All right. Caller disclosures. Agent calls must provide the name of the caller, the person or entity on whose behalf the call is being made, a telephone number or address at which the person or entity may be contacted. So if you're asked to provide your phone number, your entity, you should provide your name and entity anyway, right? Because we're in the sales business. So you want them to know that you're a realtor. You want them to know that you're with a certain brokerage.
Well, and that's actually an administrative rule with the division as well. They're supposed to identify yourself as an agent. And I don't know how many agents don't do that. Like it's insane. If an agent will send you a random text and you probably get the same one saying, hey, is this place available? And you're like, well, which place? Well, the one on Charlotte Avenue. And you're like, sure, yes or no. And then you find out after 22 texts that they're an agent, right? You're supposed to always identify yourself as an agent.
And then you take it a step further. If the person on the phone wants you to give them your company name, your address, those kind of things, you need to cooperate with them and provide that rather than just hang up, hope that the call goes away. If they're asking you that stuff, they're probably pissed off, right?
So think of your favorite agent from another brokerage. Oh, they must have spoofed my number.
Well, the problem is they got your call log, so they're gonna tie that.
Yeah,
number
you
back
just say
to
they
you.
spoofed it.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I mean, we don't do that.
So
I know, but if I did, I know an agent I would use. But
how do we scrub the numbers? So I did a little bit of research, and this is the company that I use. Lots of.
Now, when I Googled it, there are dozens of companies to use. So there are lots of different choices.
The thing I like about this company is that your first 25 each month are free. So you don't have to pay for anything for the first 25 inquiries. And then after that, you pay a monthly fee of $25, and that gets you up to 1,000 numbers that you can scrub on a monthly basis.
Scrub it for you, is that what this is? So if you didn't want to like log in, like if you're not called, like look at that, you could do this service instead and they would be scrubbed.
Yeah. So why not do it? It's free. First 25 numbers each month are free. All you have to do is go in and register, put a credit card on file in case you go over your 25 free a month, then it's gonna start to charge you after that. But there's different tiers to their plan. The more numbers that you need, obviously the cost goes up a little bit, but it's very inexpensive to scrub up to 1,000 numbers each month, and you get the 25 free. So you can basically scrub one every business day for an entire month and not have to pay anything for it. So it's called DNC Scrub Lite. And that's the best company I've seen. Obviously, there's a lot of third-party providers for this service, so you can do your own research and see if you find something that you like better. But I think this service is good. I use it. I'm not a heavy user. I've only had to pay 1 month to scrub more than 25 numbers. 25 numbers seems to do it for me. If you guys are into heavy calls and you think you're going to exceed the 25, maybe partner with other agents in the office and share an account. You could do that as well.
A lot of your title companies have, well, I'm not gonna say the name of the title company, but a marketer with one of the title companies that we see regularly, utilized regularly. They said that the insurance, whatever who regulates them, said that if they're providing lists, it has to be a scrubbed one. I don't know if that's true or not true. But if you are getting lists from any source, make sure A, you ask the question, and B, you check it. Right? Don't just take someone else's word for it. So I know we lean on title companies for random stuff on occasion, but don't just think that because they said, oh, we check it, that it's done.
Well, and even at the most expensive plan on this is still way cheaper than a lawsuit because just so you guys know, E&O does not cover that. And we are giving so many disclaimers that that's going, you personally will get sued. You personally.
Yeah. And, you know, KW settled the suit for $40 million. And part of that was that they're going to educate their agents and put that responsibility on the agents to make sure they're doing business right. That's why every training you hear TCPA is because it's that important. It's $11,000 per violation. So something you don't want to mess with. So, and then just lastly, the hours of which you can contact people are 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. local time. So those are the times with which you can call. If you call before that or after that, then that's also a violation under the Telecommunication Act. If you contact them at hours other than those hours. So 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. local time. In order to place your calls, your text messages, your emails, those kinds of things. Any questions? Mark? Any more questions you have?
So I guess the one other thought I'm thinking of is, do we have any, is there a good example of verbiage that you can use for people to opt in? So that you have the ability to text and email?
So
I'm just thinking for my own self, like if I have lead source where someone's registering, you know.
Yeah, that's their permission.
You don't have to have a little disclosure. This allows me to,
They
just if
reached
anybody
out to
gives
me.
you your information,
Yeah.
if they give you their information, then
They're giving you
fine
their
to go
permission.
ahead and contact them how you please.
Yep. Come through your website, your signage, you know, any of that stuff. This is where they're contacting you. That's the permission. Where the permission is needed is if you're contacting them. So it's outbound calls, outbound text, outbound emails, all that inbound stuff where they're initiating the contact, whether it's through a lead source, your signage, your website, whatever, that's permission.
So, Mark, I saw a really good, just a good blurb on another agent's contest page. And they said, by filling out this form, you're giving me permission to contact you. However, if you don't want to be contacted in the future, you can opt out after the fact. And
That's what we have on our,
so you put it back on them to opt out.
you know, like on our Google Forms, we have that as that auto response, like once they go to submit it, it will send that like by submitting this form. XYZ. Then they're in the know that maybe they're opting in and do the rest to contact them if they win our giveaway.
It's funny that some people actually use this as what they're living. Anytime someone calls them and they didn't want to be contacted, they record it or whatever and they go off people for.
I don't have a clue. I don't know anyone personally who's had to pay a fine because of that. I'm not gonna say that. there are
This
people,
is
but I don't know
Chris
who's
at the
broadcast
KW
that. I don't have a
Success
clue how many
office.
it's top in the
Period.
realtor world.
Wanted to just let you know that your license came in.
But I don't want to be that
Information
one.
mark.
So I was watching a podcast about
I've
this,
submitted
earlier in the week.
your
The guy that was doing the
board
podcast is an attorney, and
information
he
to the
said,
Northern Wasatch
he said,
Association
you know,
of
we've all
Realtors.
heard of attorneys that are ambulance chasers.
And I've
There
initiated
are attorneys
your
that are
membership with the
TCPA
MLS.
chasers.
Period.
And so there are attorneys
Both
that make a
organizations
living
should reach out to
pursuing
you.
these kinds of cases, just like class
for
action
payment
lawsuit that was
and
filed
account
against it.
details.
They're realtors that specialize in a certain
Well,
field.
let me know if you have any
certain,
questions.
Litigation, and they make a full-time
And
living.
once
and a
you're
very
set
good
up
living Doing it, and
with
so.
the
a
board
lot of
and the
times they'll be-
MLS,
people being Contacted by an
we'll
attorney
get you
saying,
in
"Hey,
here
has this
and
happened to
start
you?"
tech
If it
training.
has, you could
Period.
make $11,000. So, sometimes
you
legal
soon.
is behind it as well.
What about when you get a phone call from, like, you had an open house and, you know, and they don't have a do not solicit on their door, and then they call you and they're like, I'm on the, you know, and they, you know, obviously at that point you said, I'm so sorry. But they really don't have any.
Wait.
How would
In
you
this
know?
scenario, you're asking if you go knock on their door,
Like you're,
that's not the do not call knocking on their door kind of thing. Yeah.
like if they don't have a no soliciting sign on their door and you're just, you know, informing the neighbors of the open house, they're not there, and you leave a little top by thing for them to inform of
Yeah,
their.
that's a different scenario.
That's not under this act. This is only telephone, text messages, and email. And faxes, but who does fax?
But in the olden days, the
Probably a
fax was a big
pager
deal.
also.
Yeah. Actually, they send
Yeah,
her a-
and you would
But you
get
get
like 22 faxes on your thing, and one was important, the rest was, yeah, because that's what I think the biggest one was get avoided.
I took a trip to China off of a fax. It was nice. I saw the Great Wall and
Get
everything.
a regular for all of it.
So is it clear as mud now? Everybody's good?
So
Clearer than mud?
do you guys know the moral of the story though? What it is? Do your homework, check your numbers. That's it. Like if you check
your
your numbers,
numbers.
rest will fall into place.
Know your numbers.
Yep, know your numbers.
No,
The place, everything of business.
Yeah.
Oh, all your numbers.
And by the way, any texts that come out through Twilio, you guys may have said this in the beginning, I'm sorry, I missed it, I haven't arrived here, but. Any text that you send through command already have the option for them to opt out, regardless of what it is, it gives them an option to subscribe. Same thing with every email you send out. The important part is if they unsubscribe, you need to make sure you're paying attention, it gives you notifications when someone unsubscribes. Because them unsubscribing from your email is also the same as them saying, we don't want texts or phone calls anymore, right?
So question on that, because this literally happened this morning. Have a client that I had her set up on a listing alert. Set up like a year ago, because she's like, I just wanted, you know, if anything pops up, because they're like for land, and so she unsubscribed from this morning. So I reached out to her, so something like that, where
Something like that, how would you
it's like
guys,
they
guys have the
unsubscribed
same
from
thing?
MLS.
They've unsubscribed to their,
Once that I think that because you've had permission in the past, that warrants a conversation.
Because like I texted her and I was like, hey, I just saw that you unsubscribed from the listing alert we sent up a year ago.
Or you want to be removed from everything.
Like send you, you know, that.
So you're re-asking their permission. So I think that's the best way to handle it. We're not looking for X, Y, Z. Correct.
I'm so sorry, should be sure, like, you know, I told you to keep it open, but I told you not to, so. But
Yeah, that's the appropriate way to handle it. So nice job.
so as long as we get new permission. I've had someone unsubscribe from like a neighbor. Yeah, that they were getting, they were just like, oh, I just never was opening up.
Oh, I didn't realize it was you.
Yeah, well, they
Yeah.
knew it was me, but they were like, oh, I didn't realize that meant I was unsubscribing from everything, I just don't want the neighborhood.
I still want cookies to salmon, right?
one thing we have to,
We have to have a conversation.
to send them another like our newsletter, anything like that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, that's what I think, because that was a conversation I had, because she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that would unsubscribe me from everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, I'll just stop I said, okay, perfect, I'll restart everything but the newsletter. I mean, not the newsletter, the neighborhood report.
So to follow up on what Rusty said, so if you do get the unsubscribe and they truly do want to unsubscribe from everything, then do what you said. And that tag them appropriately and command with the do not contact.
We have two, we have our unsubscribe tags and we have our do not call tags, so that we can, I mean, it's essentially the same thing, but it just for us helps us understand like, okay, they were more so getting emails from us versus calls type of a thing.
Okay.
So that should be the same.
Perfect. Yeah, because it becomes your responsibility at that point to track, to make sure it doesn't happen again.
I think because we don't know how many people have been fined and found guilty, you know what I mean? I think that if someone does, it's gonna be they'll probably make a big splash about it personally. So,
All right, any other questions or concerns?
I'm not on the do not call because I'm an agent, right? And I got my number out there around the world. Ultimately, right? So you want people to call. But I'm at the point now, I get so many solicitors that I don't answer. That was one I didn't know who it was. And so if I don't know who it is, I typically let it go to voicemail and check it.
I like that new iPhone feature that's just potential spam.
What about, so I guess the best way to maintain an internal do not call list is maybe in command or?
Tag them in command.
I just tag them because it's easier to just.
The best way to do it is the way you're going to do it, right? Because you might say command, you might say, you know, it's easier for me just to do it in an Excel spreadsheet. So just whatever you're going to use is the best one. I don't suggest doing it on a napkin. However, if you're at dinner and you might need to write it on the napkin to add it to your spreadsheet or your command later.
I keep mine in notes. It's not the most efficient way to do it, but it's on my phone. That's where I keep it.
You know, it's always with
It's on my
you.
computer as well. Mhm. Yeah, so I keep them in notes. So whatever works for you. Great questions. You guys are smart, man. Asking a lot of hard questions.
Yes, thank you.
We try to keep it compliant. We do a pretty good job. I mean, overall, as many transactions as we have and as many agents as we have.
We've only had a few of you go to realtor jail, so.
Yeah.
Hopefully this group won't.
Here's a funny story. We were doing a question game on Sunday, Mother's Day, and like you just ask random questions that everyone answers. And one of them was like, if you went to jail, who would you call to bail you out? And I was like, hey, this can't be family related. You guys have to tell me someone that you would call. And so they're all going around and they're like, well, who would you call, Mom? And I'm like, that's not really, I said, that's not in this room or family. Like, I'm like, Sean, my broker. I'm like, this is not gonna bail people out before.
This is sad. I used to get the auto text from one of the local bail bonds places.
Oh my God.
I bailed a few people out.
I told my employees, I would never go out. No waste of phone call calling me because your butt's gonna rot in jail.
Ken is not our guy, guys. You can't call him.
That was for my kids. That was my boys.
Sounds like you do.
Yeah.
No, because if it's your child, you want them to waste that one call.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'll bail you out next week.
He said, call your mother.
Yeah.
Softy. You'll rot in jail if you call me.
Okay.
Thanks.
If you think of something that you didn't ask, literally, let's do this and put it in our KW private Facebook page so other people can learn that weren't here. If you say, hey, I was at the class today and now I thought about blah, blah, blah. So we can get more people educated because we want more people to understand this. Because I think there's more fear around it there's more fear than it's actually the work that you have to do to comply. So.
Okay, good deal. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for doing all the research, Ken.
Red X.
And when you Google it, there are dozens and dozens, but some of those consumer sites are not all created equal. And he did the research, and that's why he likes that.
I just looked at reviews, I looked at cost, and Red X has been around for a long time. It's kind of the trusted name in real estate.
So I did Land Voice for a while. I just like every time I go or you know what I mean. So
Land Voice is actually a Utah company, but I found that in Utah they're not accurate, and for whatever reason, other states they're super accurate.
So they say DMC on what they give you, but you check it and it's not.
Yeah, I don't know where they get their numbers and why they're not always accurate, because I've heard that same thing where some of them are on there, even though they're claiming they're not. So.
Okay.
This morning, like I know you, that's when I got on and downloaded. I downloaded on my phone. And I was we could, yeah, anything will turn out on the truth, so you don't have to, if it makes it easier.
Today's the day. 100 or bust.
Gonna make it up.
I like it.
I was checking out your ones.
Oh, my website.
Being recorded by you. You unrecorded.
Is it done?
Yeah, we're done. I didn't want to shut it down there.
This is the part